things to do. I'm not going to intrude on that time. Very impressive. I really didn't expect the depth of understanding, for example, of how to value an insurance organization. It was very impressive. And good presentation skills. So I was asked to talk about my career, but I don't know that I should do that. I think what I should do is to talk about just sort of the foundational ideas that have survived over time and thrived over time. But because we're in such a period of change in society, and as I listened to these terrific presentations, obviously you're focusing in very much on the impact of technology. So is the past prologue, or are the changes so dramatic that, well, that's a nice story, Mr. Ryan, but it's irrelevant because things have changed so much? So let me just give you some founding principles in my career, because they have survived and thrived. So the first principle was understanding yourself. And I had a pretty good understanding of myself that I ought to go into sales. So I believed that sales was my future. And at that time, very few college graduates went into the insurance business. In fact, people said to me, "You went to Northwestern, spent 4 years, and now you're going to go sell insurance?" And actually some fathers of friends of mine tried to talk me out of it. But I knew that the insurance industry, after studying it, just on my own, had a tremendous set of opportunities. Number one, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And it was clear to me that I didn't have any capital, that sweat equity was available in the insurance business. Because literally you could sell 24/7, 365. And in the early days, I had long days and 7-day weeks. So that sweat equity translated into what became Aon. But I knew that I didn't want to try to do it by myself. So the first founding company I called Pat Ryan and Associates. I didn't have any, I had one associate. But we wanted to sound bigger than we were. But we knew that getting people to do what I could do and multiplying that effort that created the sweat equity would build something of value. So started with one person I hired, and then at the peak of when I retired from Aon, there were 60,000 employees. So the principle of multiplying yourself through others worked, and it's working again in Ryan Specialty. So I just leave that as a founding principle. Last night I talked about the importance of culture. Intuitively, I knew that the culture of the organization was going to be really fundamental to the success. So I tried to think of what I would want if I was going to come to work for that company. Now, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I realized that equity opportunities were going to attract a certain kind of quality builder mentality to help me build. So we gave equity early. But that principle survived. And Mark would tell you that the equity plans at Aon have retained incredible talent over these 60 years. So that was an important recognition. But equity alone was not going to do that. I realized that empowerment, because I went to a Catholic grade school, and we had academics and deportment, they called it. I got a D, never an F, but a D, all 8 years, and takes corrections graciously. So I knew that I had to be an entrepreneur. But it's important to understand what you're all about. And so I wanted people who wanted to build and be a partner, and that worked. And that has sustained through Aon, and that has now a foundational principle of Ryan Specialty Group. The employees own 25% of the company. And the goal is to get it up to at least a third. And it's their company. And they think as owners. And they act as owners. And I have great respect for RLI. And that teamwork concept that they have, I think, is fundamental to any successful organization. And we had that all the way through the career, because people just function better as teams, as members of a team, and know their role, and are willing to play their role, and want to win. They're competitive. They may not be athletes today, but at one point in time, even if they peaked in grade school, they liked sports. They liked to be a member of a team. So we carried that principle on. I believed, and I still believe, and I said this last night, that distribution is key to this industry, because people generally don't buy insurance. They're sold insurance. Now, property casualty, workers' comp, they have to buy it because it's the law. But I never believed that I wanted to be just monoline in the industry, but actually multi-line. And so people buy discretionary insurance or compulsory. We decided to focus on compulsory. And so the specialization idea became something that we built on. And little known, but the early days of Aon, we were really a specialty broker, because we wanted to be able to differentiate. I don't like to be in commodity businesses. Now, sometimes you have to be, because that's part of your overall customer base, client base. But to be able to differentiate through policy form, coverages. Never liked to get into something where price was the ultimate driver. Quality of service. Everybody says they have good service, but you have to have good service. But you have to be a lot more than that. So that took us to the specialty focus, and that has really worked well. All the way through, and Aon is a series of specialties, and dominant in many of these specialties. Ryan Specialty Group, dominant in certain specialties. And so we've focused on that, and that survived, and that's working really quite well. I said last night that the role of the agent and broker is timeless. So I went in as an agent first. In fact, my first job was with a Philadelphia-based insurance company called Penn Mutual Life. And if you were a good salesperson and you led your class, so to speak, you got to come to Philadelphia and have your picture taken with the president of Penn Mutual next to the Liberty Bell. I still have that photo. That was a big deal. But I said, life insurance not for me. I did it for a year and a half, but in those days they called it fire and casualty. But just intuitively, I thought there was a lot more opportunity in what's now property and casualty. And so we focused on property and casualty. But those fundamental and founding days, as I said, carry on. So I think an important point I should make, because you did want me to talk about career, and that is that we grew the company through organic growth and acquisition. I don't believe you ever grow a business just through acquisition. You add scale, but you're not growing the company unless you're growing organically. So the common reference is same-store sales for, what are McDonald's same-store sales? So we decided to do a serious amount of growth through acquisition at Aon, but we didn't have the money because it started with sweat equity, and we never really raised. We went public, but we didn't raise any capital. We just went public. I won't get into that. That sounds pretty stupid, and it was. But ego. So anyhow, we were given an opportunity to take over a public insurance company. But they were in the individual accident and health business. And I didn't want to go into that business because my dream was to build this distribution business, which became brokerage, managing underwriting businesses. And I didn't want to be in the direct sales or the individual accident. But it was a public company, and they had 500 million of hard equity net worth, 100 million of free cash flow, paid an 8% annual dividend, and had been paying that for like 25 years in a row. And one day I woke up and I said, stupid, you're not taking over, I should say, an accident health company. You're taking over a money machine. That balance sheet and that cash flow gave us the capital to go on to build Aon into what it is today, structurally, and it worked because we saw the opportunity that this regional specialty company really could become a global broker, because there wasn't a real global broker in the late 80s. Marsh was international, but not global. And industry was going global, so you better go global, be with your clients and your prospects. So we globalized on the back of that balance sheet and that cash flow. So we never had to issue equity and dilute the shareholders because we had this cash flow that allowed, and I was impressed with how you valued the companies and the balance sheet and so on. But that's really what we have lived for all of these years, and we're reliving again because I believe that scale with specialty is critical. I was very pleased back in the early 90s when Sandy Weil put together what is now J.P. Morgan. But he had the Travelers, he had the Citigroup Bank, he had lots of others. But he said the key to the insurance business, the best place to be in the insurance business is distribution. And I thought, that's great, because here's this iconic leader, and the facts are that capital, sorry Jim, but capital can be fungible. You can get capital in a lot of places. People are throwing capital at the distributors today. It's very easy to raise, very easy to get. But what's not fungible is talent. So the original principle of attracting associates, high-quality people who wanted to think entrepreneurially, act entrepreneurially, and build something of value had great currency, and it still does. And so differentiating talent has been something that we have worked on for all of these years. But one of the reasons I'm here, besides that Mark and Jim asked me to, is I want to meet differentiating talent and attract them to our company. And your education, I can tell, is differentiating you as people coming into this industry. So we're always looking for differentiating talent. That's an ongoing principle. Now, when I looked at what the work you've done on what in effect is disintermediation, I got a little nervous. But I believe, we believe, that the integration of technology and insurance talent, insurance expertise, is really what has to be done. I said last night, and I'm sure not all of you were there, so I'll repeat it. But a lot of insurtech people are coming into the insurance industry and think that we're archaic, we've never managed our data, we haven't aggregated it, we haven't mined it, we're not using it as tools. As an industry, we're beginning to, but as an industry we haven't, and that they're going to show us how to do it. That's really not worked. Not worked. But what is working is when technology people and insurance minds get together and collaborate to bring solutions to the public, whether it's consumer products or commercial products. And that's just the beginning. Everybody knows, and that's why I liked your workers' comp example, that people will ultimately be buying some business in electronic trade. But it is slowly developing. And you had Berkshire Hathaway up there. Berkshire Hathaway is a huge workers' comp carrier. And they have, obviously, this direct to the insured strategy. RT especially does over $500 million of workers' comp premium with Berkshire. And I'm not going to say because I don't know, but I can guarantee you that the direct to the insured is a small fraction of that number. So I believe that the integration of technology with people, with intellectual capital, with hardworking, talented people, is the future. So I talk all the time, and I did last night, that the advice and the advocacy, and I didn't say, but I'll add it because it's a triangle really. Execution, those three value adds are timeless. Now, how much of that will be integrated with technology, we're going to find out. How high up the risk scale that goes, nobody knows. We'll find out. But everyone has to be prepared, and we've invested a lot of capital to be able to provide an electronic trade. Now, on the small commercial, which is equivalent to what you presented, but beyond comp, multi-line, is we believe that multi-line, multi-carrier presentation electronically is the solution. Now, nobody else is doing that. You say, well, you don't have to give quotes, multiple quotes to a small buyer. I don't agree with that. I think people want to know that they got a competitive price. It's just human nature. So when you look at the direct response auto and homeowners on television, people are buying that. They're buying electronically, but they're advertising price comparison. So when you look at Geico, they're telling you they're 15% cheaper. So people need reassurance, comfort that they're getting a fair deal. So we believe that you have to present to them at least 2 and hopefully 3 quotes. And then the broker agent says, this one is better even though it's 5% higher because of the form. And so back to the differentiation, even in small commercial, but and beyond specialty, form differentiation, coverages are really, really critical. So we try to keep differentiating. So even in the small commercial, we'll try to put just a little bit broader coverage or a little twist on the coverage value, and then have the agent broker point that out. So I'm rushing through this because, as Jim said last night, it's 60 years. But I wanted to share with you what these principles are and why I think that your decision to go into the insurance business, I don't know, a lot of people are accidental insurance people. I wasn't. I'd really thought about it. And obviously you are, or you wouldn't be here. But it's just an incredible industry with opportunities that I believe are greater than almost any. I mean, you can get lucky in a tech company and get rich, but that's often accidental. And they can become obsolete. And we saw Blockbuster. And that's happening in technology. But you don't become obsolete in the insurance industry because the need is permanent and it's growing and it's getting more complex. And even for a small business, the risks can be quite complex. And in today's world, where auto is such a difficult risk, and Mark would tell you that one of the toughest risks to place today is the commercial auto fleet or truck risk, just because there's so many accidents. And when there are accidents at the high speeds, and it's a serious, serious risk. So getting that form difference, getting coverage differences. So we constantly working because we believe that the satisfied, happy client is the future, not the future, it's the present value of these calculations that you were making, and that's the future value. So when I retired from Aon, I didn't want to retire, but I wanted to start over as an entrepreneur because I'd been there 44 years. That seemed long enough. We brought in a young guy. I was 68, he was 42. You can do the math on that one. That's a good thing. It's worked out really well for Ann and worked out really well for me. But I wanted to build something over again and create something of value and make an impact. So Ryan Specialty Group is RT Specialty, making a very significant impact, all on these principles. But do I have my head in the sand like Blockbuster did? Am I wrong on the future need for the intermediary? I don't think so. But I'm wrong on it, and anybody's wrong on it, if they don't value the integration of technology and that human factor. So as we're building our small commercial business, because of the complexity of risks, we have a manpower, boots on the ground strategy that in cities all over this country, we have people who can work with those clients. And not everybody wants to trade electronically. In fact, as I said, it's pretty slow. Even you millennials, as tech savvy as you are in every part of your life, they still send in emails. It's an interesting phenomenon. But the answer is we won't become obsolete if we integrate technology with the human talent. So that's really what we are, in fact, working on, developing. Getting back to Aon, Aon has continued to differentiate itself through the creation of new products, solutions to new risks, and earn that value add. The global broker, there are really 2.5 global brokers. Willis isn't really global, but they're a big factor in enough of the world's geography. But that, I don't want to call it it's not certainly a monopoly because there's more than one, but it's a very small group of providers who can really do a global insurance business. The other part of that we believed when we were building Aon was scale really matters. So now you see Marsh buying JLT, now they're bigger than Aon again. So everybody says, and I'm not asking Mark, well, what does Aon do about that? Do they buy Willis? Who knows? But the point is, when we passed Marsh in the late 90s, from being 10 years earlier, a modest-sized regional broker, but with that printing press in the basement called individual accident business to fund it, one of our board members said, nobody gives up market leadership. So with every action, there's a reaction. So get ready, Marsh is going to come and get into the M&A business. And they did. They bought Johnson and Higgins, they bought Sedgwick, and they went back in the first place. So in our industry, scale matters, but particularly on the distribution side. On the carrier side, it used to be that AIG was very dominant. Those days have ended. They're a very good company making a good comeback, but there's not a dominant carrier. Lloyd's, when you aggregate it all, very large, but as you know, and appropriately, they're contracting, they're shrinking, because building scale got out of control for them. And they started doing things that weren't very well managed. So they've changed that. And the specialty companies, the specialty carriers, like Philadelphia, that Jim built, a great company, are really the ones that are winning. So an RLI, a Markel, etc. Now Chubb, the younger Greenberg, has done a great job of building that company. But it's not a dominant carrier, and there won't be a dominant carrier, because there's so much capital that a mid-sized carrier can attract a partner, a capital, excuse me, a capital markets partner, and have all the capital they need to compete with anybody. So that phenomenon is a good change, because it levels the playing field for people who are innovative and creative. And I'm going to go to the Q&A with this closing thought. What attracted me to the industry is it's fragmented. I said last night, when I got out of college, industry was generally very consolidated. IBM was the tech industry, a couple of fringe players, but basically IBM. Big three auto. that weren't the imports at that time, all the way through consumer packaged goods. These are big companies, not fragmented. The insurance industry was fragmented, so it allows for innovation. It allows for entrepreneurs. It still does. As big as this industry's become, it's still very fragmented. So there's all these great opportunities. So I'll leave it at that. Millennials, we have a lot of millennials, and we love millennials because, and you described what millennials want. But millennials work hard, but they want certain things, and one of the things they want is social value. So I struggled with it because I don't know much about it. Vaping, we don't do vaping. We provide real value to the public. I believe that. And so this is just a great industry where you can satisfy your own creative needs. You can get the security of a permanent career, and you can do something really good for society. And that's a pretty nice combination. And that's why 60 years later, I'm still doing this. Because I love the innovation. I love finding solutions to issues. And I love bringing value add to society. I like creating jobs because I think that that's really important for society. So you're all on the right track. Stay on it. And when you're out interning and you're out deciding where you want to go, keep in mind that the culture of that organization is what's going to fulfill you or not. You got to get the cultural fit. We grew Aon through acquisition. We're growing Ryan Specialty Group through acquisition. We will not make an acquisition if the culture is not right. The cultural fit is not right. Doesn't matter what the price is, because you'll make a big mistake. So it's the same thing when you're seeking employment. You've got to be really comfortable with that culture. So when you're interning, one of the things I would suggest you watch the closest is, do people live what they say? Because there's lots of fancy words about culture. But you learn this from your parents or your first grade teacher. But everybody looks at actions and they discount the words. And they run when the actions are not appropriate. So, as far as I'm concerned, that should be your number one identification and the fit for you within that culture. So, happy to take your questions. How much time do we have? 10?
Yeah.
I talked too long, sorry about that. But we have 10 minutes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Ryan, you've obviously been a leader within the industry for a long time. Could you please talk about the characteristics that you personally have employed over your career that you believe have led to effective leadership?
That's a great question. Did y'all hear it? What personal characteristics for effective leadership? As simple as this sounds, is treating people the way you want to be treated. And that sounds like an oversimplification, but I guarantee you, it's violated a lot. So, we're in a trust business. Insurance is just not even a piece of paper anymore, but it's a commitment of trust. And you have to have that as a leader. Empowerment. Everybody wants to be free to be able to do what they're capable of doing. So empowering people, giving them the opportunity, but the freedom to express themselves. We call it self-optimization. People getting in a position where they're empowered to be the best that they can be. And I always said this about the industry, but it's true. The only barrier to growth in the insurance industry is self-imposed. Because if you go to the wrong company and you're well-educated and talented, you can correct that and go to a better company. So, but you want to be empowered. And people talk about empowerment, but you got to watch to see, is that really happening? So these internships are important. Look at the leadership. Does the leader have his door closed or her door closed all the time? Or are they engaged with their teammates? Critical. Lead by example. Lead from the front. Live the values. And if people don't live the values, move on, because it's not the right place for you. So codifying values and living them, I think, are critical. Giving everybody a voice, that's part of empowerment. But people want to be heard. They don't necessarily say you have to do what I want, but they want to be heard. That's part of empowerment. So do they listen? A good leader does much more listening than talking. And I always believe that if you sit down with somebody, you let them talk, they're going to tell you what it is that they want to buy. They're going to tell you what it is that bothers them. And so being a good listener, and that's a core value of our business, of our company, and is at Aon as well. Listen to the people. And so the way you develop really good teamwork is you're listening. And so I always ask people their opinion. What's your thought on this? And sometimes people, why is he doing that? Why don't you make the damn decision? We do make decisions, but we get input because people want to give their input. So it's all about human relations. Leadership is about human relations. And you can really get people to perform at high levels if you start with respect and you keep that going all the way through. People just want to be respected. And part of being respected is being listened to. Yes?
You mentioned basing your company off of the idea of getting into a specialty market. You mentioned compulsory specifically. What market would you say to get into today would make a company as successful as yours?
That's a really good question. Which specialty areas? It's a hard one to answer, but I'll say this. For a company like Aon, because they're global and they have this huge reach, not just geographically, but within industries, they have to maintain, but they have to be innovative to maintain. So Aon didn't develop it, but they blew the doors off it with transactional liability. And now that took capital. But my successor wisely listened to the people who said, if you give us capital, we can really lead the M&A business for what's called reps and warranties, tax liabilities, litigation liabilities. Sellers care more about how these liabilities and buyers are handled than they do the price. So that's a whole innovative new area. So property today, it used to be that a property policy is a property policy. That's not true anymore. It hadn't been true for a long time. But with all of these acts of God, that's the vernacular, it's really, really important how those policies respond. So I think one of the key differentiators is not just the area you go into, but how you go into it. And we, for example, when we did this at Aon, and we have it now, we bring in lawyers, we hire lawyers who are experts at wording, so that we take the ambiguity that's inherent in a legal document. You know, it's often not clear. So we try to make that simple and clarify it. And that's a way of listening to the insured, having policy forms that respond to what the likely claims. So it's sort of focusing in on these developing areas. Everybody wants to be in cyber, and that's important. But you got to figure out how you differentiate yourself in cyber, or it'll become a commodity, and it's going to be. So I think it's looking at growth areas like transactional, and then differentiating yourself. Because just like technology, people will emulate success. So you have to just keep changing and adjusting to make sure you're differentiating. Yes?
Sorry. In terms of InsurTech, this is like a perspective from like obviously someone higher up in the broker community. So like you talk a lot about like being more as a specialization and then also but like integrating data into the broker community. So do you think there's value for companies like Kate that are specialized in their industry, in that InsurTech space? Or do you think they're kind of wasting their time and they should just be merging with brokers and incorporating technology with that already established community?
I don't think there's an absolute answer to that. If I had to choose, I would say they should sell to a distributor, because that distribution, they'll just be an arm of that. But that doesn't mean that they can't become a Geico or a Progressive. You know, those all started as direct response companies. But many of them have segued into agency business, brokerage business. So what we're doing is developing our own technology. And we don't want to be a software house, but we want to have technology that we know can blend with our strategy. So, you know, not that particular company, but a company that has solved for that is a quicker way to do it than developing yourself. So I think that your presentation of saying this is a potential is real. So if somebody gets behind the curve because they didn't invest, making an acquisition is a very quick way to catch up or get ahead. So I think that exit value is real. Any other questions? Okay, well, good luck to all of you. Oh, you have a question?
One question. We've got a bunch of future professionals here, so I want to listen. What should I be doing? What should we be doing here at St. Joe's as faculty members, as people influencing us? What should we be doing to help you?
Well,
You laid the gauntlet. NSM 10, RT 6. So I've got it.
that's going to change quickly.
Yes,
That's going to change quickly. Well, I think reaching out to the industry and getting your students into the right internships, absolutely critical. I would say to the interns, don't fall in love too easily. Be discerning, because you have a lot of value. So where you intern, if that doesn't really meet all of the tests that you would like, but you say, I want to have a job, be patient. You'll get a good job, and pick the right one. I mean, I think it's really, really critical. It's very easy when you are trained like you are and educated like you are to find the fit. But find the fit, I think that's critical. The other thing that I really was impressed with, Mike, is the real life experiences. So I was thinking, and this sounds stupid for me to say, because I don't want to introduce competition. We'd like to hire all of these people. But the understanding of how you value companies, how you analyze the balance sheet, how you look at the present value, future value. There's a phenomenon called the consolidation of the insurance industry, led by private equity firms. The amount of capital that they're bringing in is mind-boggling. And they want to put more in. And the prices have gone up. Back in the early days at Aon, we would buy brokerages for 3, 4, 5 times EBITDA. You can't get near that. Now, some of them are going for 15. Most of the core acquisitions at Aon were bought in the 5 and 6 multiple. So think of the difference. But your background has value to people like that, because they're financial people. They're not insurance people. But they want to be in the insurance business. So that was dumb for me to say, because you're all going to run out and say, I want to be in private equity. But I just want to be candid with you. That financial analysis understanding has really good value. And in fact, you could apply that good value to an acquisitive, strategic, like us. We have people that do every day what you guys are working on and doing, what you did in your presentation.
And the one thing you didn't see on that, because of time, is the work they do underneath that, right? To get that net income.
Yeah.
What's the combined ratio? What are the losses by segment?
Yeah.
You know, really just trying to, it's real. It's about them understanding. And I think Joe said it last night. What makes a company tick?
Yeah.
Right? What's their distribution look like? What's their profitability? Well, Pat, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. We're honored to have you. And as I said last night, it really says a lot about this program, and you're just inspiring to all this. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here.